nu metal is certainly a subgenre that elicits certain reactions from different people, whether you're someone like me who absolutely eats that shit up like it was a bitch with a fat ass, or someone who cannot stand it for whatever reason. Beloved or hated, no one can deny this subgenre was absolutely huge back in its heyday from the late 90s to early 2000s. Tons of nu metal bands were being played on MTV, the radio, with even some being on TRL, and it's kind of hard to think about it nowadays, but you could legitimately call them pop stars of their time, Fred Durst being the most obvious. In fact, whenever nu metal's downfall and relevancy is described, I usually hear this idea that the scene just got oversaturated with many nu metal bands trying to cash in on what was popular. So one would assume that pretty much any band that decided to bring out the turntables and drop tuning was able to achieve big money, but okay, that's not entirely true. Some bands did get like some amount of success, but they never really got the push into the mainstream that other groups did, leading them to being completely forgotten nowadays, whether that be from the groups disbanding or the band just not being marketed well enough. The bands I want to talk about were only able to crank out like 1 or 2 studio albums, and I thought I'd make this into a series so I can give a spotlight to bands from the scene, ones whose stories are almost never told about all that often. And to start off, we have a band that I consider one of my personal favorites. One thing that I often think about is what the most nu metal band is. Like, one that sounds exactly how you'd imagine nu metal stereotypically sounds like. One with the most aspects that you would expect from it, basically. And what do you know? Reveille has all that good shit. Down-tuned as fuck guitars, rapping vocals, a sort of angsty attitude, and even some record scratching, without this band even having a DJ at that. Now, don't get it twisted, this isn't me trying to devalue Reveille at all. In fact, it's the exact opposite. I'd gladly shoot pure nu metal into my bands like it was a heroin needle, and in all honesty, Reveille did kind of perfect their certain style of nu metal, to the point where I consider them to be in my top 10. So grab a code red, put on some Jenkos, as we take a look at one of the most nu metal bands of all time. The year is 1997. Final Fantasy VII is released, South Park starts invading TV and pop culture as we know it, and Princess Diana. But while all that was going on, a group of teenagers from Massachusetts started a band that would later be known as the Spice Girls, which is what they would have been called if it were my decision, but they decided to name it Reveille instead, just to spite me. What the fuck? These members were vocalist Drew, whatever that last name is, bassist Carl Randolph, drummer Justin Wilson, and guitarist Greg Sullivan and Steve Mike Wazowski. All of these guys, being a bunch of angsty white boys in the late 90s and all, decided to start a nu metal band. They played at local shows and even released an EP as well as a 6-track demo. This demo would actually end up getting the attention of labels, and after a performance at the famous Manhattan CBGB, the guys in Reveille signed with Elektra Records. With the access to major label support, Reveille released their debut album, Laced, on June 22nd, 1999. Phoenix, no longer a myth, so strike a match and watch it burn. Alright, so for this series, I'm going to discuss not only the history of the bands that I talk about, but also review their albums as well. These won't be like my other reviews where I talk about each song track by track. This will be in a more of a general overview style, kind of like what Mike the Snare does, only even more white. So yeah, Laced. It is definitely a nu metal album released in '99. It's worth noting that some of the members of Reveille were still teenagers at the time of recording this album, and if I can be completely honest, they did rather well. And I'm not just saying that in the sense of, oh, it's good for their age. No, this album is genuinely well played. Okay, it's not like face-meltingly epic or anything, but I do gotta give props to these guys for making one of the most raw sounds that this subgenre has ever seen. The guitar work is actually fairly creative in places, particularly in songs like The Phoenix, Flesh and Blood, and Untied. Sure, they still have, those chug-along riffs you would expect from nu metal, but there's a lot more groove and experimentation, with The Phoenix in particular having this sort of descending riff during the verses, probably to reflect the song's title. The latter 2 songs I mentioned are just pure anger, almost increasing in intensity as the riffs are being delivered. Bring the hours, bring the pressure. It's all about fun and my predecessor. I'm a second guesser, I'm a pessimist. Call me extreme, we're like a humanist. Your silence shatters my sense of hope. How could this happen? What did I miss? Then there's also Drew's vocals. Now, if I can be completely honest, they're not as good as they could be. There are some hooks that don't really land, like the one on the song Feel. But the dude has one hell of a scream, and at this point, he didn't so much as rap as he did, like, just narrate over the instrumental in this sort of, like, villainous way. However, that's not to say that he doesn't have his moments where he shows off his rapping chops, especially on what I think is my favorite song on this record, Split. This song absolutely bumps, I will not change my mind on that. This is the track on the album where Drew basically gets to show off his skills front and center, really blending Reveille's sound into this really aggressive and chaotic hip-hop track.
Rags to rags, had a stone turn to static, get tragic, drop him like a bat, force a habit, not dramatic, got me turning in my sleep. Motherfucker takes no defeat, compete.
Plus, the song features a guest appearance from Be Real from Cypress Hill, which definitely wouldn't be the last time Be Real gave nu metal a shot, but he actually does have a pretty cool verse on the song, even if some of the lines are a little bit ew, but whatever. This song still bumps, and honestly, so is the rest of this record, with songs like Butterfly, Perfect World, Permanent, Flesh and Blood, and Untied being absolute loud bangers. However, if I may, there is a little bit of a small problem. I put problem in quotes since it really doesn't affect my enjoyment all that much, but there's a little bit of an issue with the album when it, isn't being loud and aggressive. You see, near the end of the record, there are a couple slower songs, and those are probably my least favorites. I'm not even saying that the songs being slower in and of itself is automatically a problem, but songs like Feel and Dark Horizons kinda just exist to me. I mean, for what it's worth, both Aftertaste and Dark Horizons both have guitar solos, which doesn't surprise the hell out of people who believe that nu metal doesn't have solos at all, but even then they still kinda just exist. I wouldn't even say the tracks are bad. In fact, Aftermath does have a little bit of a unique vibe to it, but compared to the other songs on this record, they're really weak. But hey, this was still a pretty respectable record. These guys gave their shot at a major label release, and honestly, they did really well. I've seen some people argue that this is actually the better of their two records, and I guess I can kinda see why people would think that. Like, it's very raw, and it really just encapsulates the feeling of a bunch of guys getting together to just make some aggressive as hell rap metal. So overall, Laced, pretty good album, but definitely not perfect, I would say. So after the release of this record, Reveille would actually go on to play several notable tours, such as Warped Tour 99, Ozfest 2000, and even the totally well-remembered Woodstock 99. I would show footage of their performance, but for some reason, Reveille's performance is one of the very few that I can't find for whatever reason. And apparently, while the guys were there, they finished their set prior to the fires and riots being started, so yeah. But after all that, the band would go into the studio once again to record their next album. On September 18th, 2001, Reveille released Bleed the Motherfucking Sky. Damn, this record kicks a lot of ass. This might just be one of my favorite nu metal albums of all time. Pretty much every shortcoming that Laced had is pretty much refined here, most of which I believe is due to the more polished production. And I know some might get turned off by that description, but believe me when I say that despite this record having better production, it doesn't sacrifice an inch of the aggression. This record was actually produced by Howard Benson, and you might not recognize his name offhand, but he does actually have a pretty good track record when it comes to producing rock albums. For example, he produced records for Motorhead, Less Than Jake, Body Count, and TSOL, though during this time in particular, he would later go on to produce a lot more nu metal records, such as POD's most successful albums, Cold Year of the Spider, Bionic Jive's Armageddon Through Your Speakers, and I Will Get to You Later. But yeah, Howard took what really worked about Reveille's sound and made everything crisp and clear while still keeping the aggression that made this band great to begin with. But it's not just the production that makes this record sound good. Oh no, that's far from, what makes it great. Drew pretty much improved in every single way that I could have imagined from the last record. His flow is a lot more tighter, he's a lot more confident in his delivery, and his hook game has drastically improved. Whether it be from the nu metal anthem that is What You Got, the fantastic opener Unborn, which even had to have one of its lines censored because Elektra is a bunch of pussies.
That old man, damn, he's talking talk. He said that I in a trailer park, and that ain't the truth. It was in the Ritz Hotel. I wore a condom so I wouldn't.
Says you're a pussy.
The almost 6-minute epic of the title track, and any other of the amazing songs on this record like Look at Me Now, Inside Out, Killing Me, or Modified Lie. Hell, there's even a short but sweet hip-hop song on the record called Down to None, and it's really good. You should probably go listen to it. And the rest of the band does a really good job on this record. Both Greg and Steve just attack you with how powerful their riffs are, keeping the weird guitar tones from Laced, but within this type of production style. Hell, even the featured guests on the album bring good performances, such as Stephen Richards from Taproot doing a long verse on the song Plastic, as well as Scooter Ward from Cold on the remix of Inside Out, which apparently became a hit on the rock airplay charts, though I'd be lying if I said I didn't prefer the original version compared to the remix. Don't get me wrong, I love Cold and all, but I think the original Inside Out has a really cool chorus on it, and Scooter did do a good job. I just have a preference for the original. Overall though, I think this record is fucking amazing. It's hands down my favorite Reveille release and one of my favorite nu metal albums of all time. If you've never heard this record, I suggest you do so immediately. Just not on streaming services, cause apparently the only version they want of this album is the fucking clean version. For the sake of humanity, don't listen to the pussy version. After the release of Bleed the Sky, they went on to be nominated by the Boston Music Awards for Album of the Year, which means that they are more based in the Grammys at least. They even won the Rising Star Award, which I guess is their version of Best New Artist, which is definitely going to make the following sequence of events really unfortunate. As in 2002, Greg Sullivan quit the band over creative differences, later being replaced with some guy called Chris Turner. A third Reveille album to be produced by Howard Benson was announced, and 2 songs, that being Your Life and Nothing No One, were confirmed to be made for the album, but the band would eventually leave Elektra Records, with Drew saying, "Our biggest problem was always battling with people at the label. They were kind of trying to market us to 12-year-old girls and it didn't work. That was our big problem with them. So, if you're one of those guys who loves it when bands don't sell out, as it were, I guess Reveille is a band for you." The band did one final tour alongside Sevendust, performing their last concert in Worcester before their eventual breakup in 2003. This wouldn't be quite the end of Reveille though, as in October of 2008, the band announced a one-night reunion show in Worcester called Reveille Reborn. The initial idea started from the licensing spot from a World of Warcraft commercial, which not only featured the legend himself, Vern Troyer, may he rest in peace, but also included instrumentals of the Phoenix and Untied during the gameplay performance, which tells me that either someone on the team of, making this commercial likes Reveille, or that Vern Troyer himself likes Reveille, which is fucking based. After the commercial came out, the band would eventually get together and come up with the idea of doing a one-night reunion. The concert happened on December 26, 2008, and featured every original member of Reveille. Sorry, Chris. Bands like Nullset, Crown Vic, and Debris were openers, and the show ultimately sold out like a motherfucker. After the show, however, the band never reunited, and even prior to the reunion show, several members of Reveille joined other bands, most notably Drew and Steve going on to start the band Genuflect, who absolutely bump from the shit I've heard from them. Their lyrics are often focused on political subjects, so if you want Reveille with a hint of Rage Against the Machine, I'd suggest giving their albums a listen. Other ones include Justin Wilson joining the band Sleep Alive, Steve joining the band City Sleeves, and even Carl Randolph joining a band called Oma. There are actually a bunch of projects that the Reveille guys joined in, but from my understanding, none of the projects are still going, which is quite a shame. But in 2023, the world was reintroduced to Reveille, not in musical form, mind you, but in the form of a red AMA on r/nu-metal. I'm always late when it comes to asking questions, so I'm kinda salty towards these things, wah. But I've actually been getting some of this information from this post, so I guess I can't really, hate on it all that much. But other than that, Reveille as a band is a project that hasn't been revisited since 2008, which honestly sucks because, like I said before, I genuinely consider these guys to be one of my personal favorite nu metal bands. Were they the most flashy band out there? No, but they never really wanted to be. They stay true to themselves, being a raucous little rap metal band with tons of energy and angst to get the crowd moving. Even if they were a nu metal band, which dominated the mainstream at the time, they kept true to their original sound and never compromised it, and I do gotta give all the respect in that aspect. If you're interested in checking out this band, definitely listen to Bleed the Sky first, or at least if you like that more raw sound. This band honestly deserves all the praise that they can get. Anyways, this has been NBA Scrub Boy saying, Reveille for life, motherfucker.
Get on the bill, take a look around.